in this section, there are 4 units. Each unit has got weightage of 4 marks, total 16 marks. So this section will be for 16 marks in your board exam. Let's try to understand. I will try to highlight key points in this section because I'm not going to make it a very boring or monotonous video. I'll take just main points. So if you see here, 18th century, it gifted English literature two entirely new forms. What are these two new forms? The periodical essay and novel. Remember this, periodical essay and novel. So out of these two forms, what caught the spirit of 18th century? That was novel. Why? Because this age was age of intellectual, sentimental and realistic playing. So people here were intellectual, sentimental, realistic. They wanted to read about their time. They wanted stories to be more purposeful and virtuous. So that's why they were more interested in novels. So since the time of its origin, that is novel, it gained popularity. It became very famous. So in first paragraph, you've seen what is important here, which keywords are important. इंग्लिश लिटरेचर में दो न्यू फॉर्म्स आए थे, periodical essay and novel. So novel, it got spirit of 18th century because people started liking this. So this is just these are some keywords in first paragraph. If you go to next one, here we will learn about the definition of novel. So what is a novel actually? It's a long narrative. एक बहुत लंबी स्टोरी होती है नॉवेल में. It can be fiction or non-fiction. And what does it describe? Intimate human experiences in prose form. Earlier novels were in poetic form, जैसे poetry लिखी जाती है उस तरह से लिखे जाते थे, but nowadays they are normally written in prose form. So what is important here to know from the point of exam, the genesis of the word novel. So the novel here is derived, taken from Italian word, that is novella. Remember this very important one. Novel taken from Italian word novella, which means new. It means new. Remember, novel, novella, new. So what is novel? It tells a story, adorning it with details of time, place, nature, people, their minds, gestures, activities. So it covers all of these aspects of human life: time, place, nature, people, their minds, their gestures and activities. Remember. So what does it create? A true picture of society of that time. Novel, they talk about, they describe important events, they describe important conflicts and issues of that time in the novel. So that's why it is said as showing you the true picture of that time. Now, so novel as a literary genre means type of literature, has history of about 2000 years. You should remember this also, this duration, 2000 years. Among early precursor of novel, those who are writing earlier, so we've seen that Greek romances dating from 2nd to 6th century, they were very famous. Then imaginative, delightful stories of ideal love, marvelous adventures, they started coming up in next 1000 years. So we saw here that which are famous work. As I told you, I will be covering main points, only keywords. So remember here, these works: Virgil's Eclogues, Malory's Morte d'Arthur, Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Remember these Greek works written in the beginning of 18th century. So Virgil's Eclogue, Malory's Morte d'Arthur, Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. So the first novel which was written in English literature, that was Tale of Genji. Tale of Genji. Who wrote that? It was written by Murasaki Shikibu. Remember the name, because this came last time in exam for fill in the blanks, or sorry, for match the following. So you should know who wrote what. Tale of Genji, first novel, was written in 1010 by Murasaki Shikibu. In Europe, we believe that Don Quixote. Don Quixote. It was written by Miguel de Cervantes. He was a Spanish writer. Don Quixote by Miguel de Cervantes. This was written between 1605 to 1615. This was supposed to be the first book in Europe which started birth of novel. So first, we say that it is supposed to be Tale of Genji, the first novel ever written in Europe. They say that it was Don Quixote, Miguel de Cervantes. In 18th century, appearance of newspaper came there. Newspapers came, magazines. These were new inventions, and middle class started reading newspapers and a magazine. So these new readers, these middle class people, they had little interest in romances and tragedies. Remember, because they had newspapers, political news of their area, then they wanted to know more about status of people. So they were reading newspapers and magazines. They were not interested in romances and tragedies. But upper class, they were more interested in romances and tragedies. The new type of literature arose in 18th century. 18th century, this new literature was characterized by the spirit of realism and denial of romantic features like enthusiasm, passion, and imagination. So when they were not interested in literature, that is romance and tragedies, so new forms of literature started. That was realist literature. The literature was talking about देयर ओन लाइफ, जो उनकी खुद की लाइफ के बारे में बता रहा था. इस तरह का लिटरेचर बहुत फेमस हो गया बिकॉज people were not interested in romances, especially middle class people. But rich class people, elite class, they were more interested in reading romances and tragedies for their enjoyment. So what happened after 1740? Novel originated as a literary form in England. Remember, in 1740, remember this date, there was an increase in trade, commerce, along with industrial revolutions there, and it gave rise to middle class. जब वहाँ पे ट्रेड कॉमर्स इंडस्ट्री जब सेटअप होने लगी तो मिडिल क्लास लोग वहाँ पे माइग्रेट हुए. दे स्टार्टेड लिविंग देयर. So these class of people had emerged to occupy an elite status. Slowly they started progressing and they became elite class of that society. So the realistic picture of everyday life, problems of common people depicted in the novels appealed to the newly educated class and was regarded by them as respectable reading material. So they started reading about that because जो ये middle class लोग थे, when they grew in status, they started knowing more about their society, about class conflicts and all that. इसी की वजह से they started reading some respectable material like novels and all that, realistic novel. So this was the background of in 18th century why people were so much interested to read novel. So novel as a form appears to have been designed for both to voice aspirations of the middle class and lower class and meet their longings. So these were some of the objectives of novels. So let's move on some of the famous books written in Europe. We have to know about them because in exam, who wrote what, these sort of questions can be asked. So the first, this book Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan, remember this, 1678. Then Oronco by Ephra Ben, 1688. They initiated plenteous and colorful traditions of English novels. Now especially John Bunyan and Ephra Ben, they started this very copious tradition of English novel. उन्होंने people started getting more interest by reading their work. उनके बाद it was Daniel Defoe. He wrote Robinson Crusoe, Moll Flanders. Remember these two books. Robinson Crusoe and Moll Flanders were two novels written by Daniel Defoe. Then Jonathan Swift, very famous book, everybody knows, that was Gulliver's Travels, a famous satire. It was a satire on that century. So Jonathan Swift, what did he write? Gulliver's Travel. Other major novelists of 18th century are Samuel Richardson, who wrote Pamela, or the subtitle of the book is Virtue Rewarded, and Clarissa. These two. these two are epistolary novel. We will learn about this epistolary novel when we move ahead. But remember, epistolary means novels which communicate like characters. When they communicate through letters. वो letters भेज भेज के अपना dialogues build up करते हैं. So that is called epistolary novels. So what did he write? Samuel Richardson, Pamela and Clarissa. Then Henry Fielding, very famous writer. Lawrence Stern, Tobias Smollett. These are very famous writers in Europe. Then we've got this tradition was enriched by some more famous, remarkable novelists. Like we have Charles Dickens, Walter Scott, Nathan Hawthorne, Horace Walpole, Thomas Hardy, Wilkie Collins, H.G. Wells. These are some of the important writers in 18th century. So when you move ahead to in 20th century, it was marked by some modern topics. Innovative styles were used by some of the writers. So who are these writers? Those who invented new forms. They used innovative styles. इसमें थे E.M. Foster, James Joyce, Joseph Conrad, Henry James, George Orwell. You know George Orwell, he wrote Animal Farm, very famous novel. Graham Greene, D.H. Lawrence, William Golding, Anthony Burgess. These are some of the important or famous 20th century novelists, those who started the tradition of novels in England. Then we've got other more novelists here. They widened the circumference of the genre by writing political, social, psychological. All of these writers like E.M. Foster, James Joyce, Joseph Conrad, Henry James, George Orwell, ये सब किसके बारे में लिख रहे थे? Political, social, psychological situation of that time, and so they were covering some modern issues. There were some immigrant authors. Who are immigrant authors? जो कोई एक country से उठ के दूसरे country में चले जाते हैं. They start writing there when they migrate. They are called immigrant authors. They settle there for some specific purpose, maybe for job and all that. Salman Rushdie from India. He is in US now. V.S. Naipaul, Trinidad. Kazuo Ishiguro, Japan. So these are some of the writers. Those who left their country, they are expatriate and they shifted to some other country for some purpose, maybe for writing, for some professions, or they might be thinking about permanently settling there. So these are some of the reasons. So who are these writers? Salman Rushdie from India, V.S. Naipaul, Trinidad, and Kazuo Ishiguro, Japan. Remember these because in exam these keywords may be turned into questions. So there was some women novelists in when you talk about the development novel. So women novelists are also not behind, even they have done a tremendous work in this regard. So यहाँ पे कौन-कौन से novelist हैं? If you see novels of manners were written. Manners means यहाँ पे जो लोगों के जो manners थे, society के जो manners थे 18th 17th century के, उनको manners को these women novelists they were showing them in their book. So Evelyn, this was a book written by Frances Burney. Gothic novels by Anne Radcliffe, a novel based on science of age, very important book. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Actually, if it's my intuition that these 2-3 texts are very important one. इसमें से आपको एग्जाम में वो क्वेश्चन बना के पूछ सकते हैं. So here, like Frankenstein, very important book, Mary Shelley, इसको दिमाग में याद रखो. Then we've got Evelina by Frances Burney, and Anne Radcliffe wrote Gothic novels. Gothic means horror stories. So Jane Austen, very famous women novelist in this regard. So she wrote so many books. No, I will not discuss or tell you the extra names because already you have got so many books here, so many writers. So I won't give you extra example. I won't confuse you with my these extra examples. So here, remember Jane Austen, very famous writer in this regard. So Bronte sisters, Emily and Charlotte, they wrote actually, no, if you see this one, Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, these two very famous books were written by Bronte sisters, that is Emily and Charlotte. Remember these names. So Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre can be asked, yes, maybe match the following or for match the following. So you should know Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre was written by Bronte sister, that is Emily and Charlotte. So Mary Ann Evans alias George Eliot wrote novels reflecting psychological insight. She was more into reading about the psychological problems of human uh, mind, or human beings. So here we have Virginia Woolf, very important writer. Uh, she kind of started stream of consciousness technique in English novel, Virginia Woolf. Agatha Christie, again very important writer. uh, her novels are based on crimes, जो crimes होते हैं society में. Her themes are focused on crimes. Then you've got Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple, two detectives created by her. These are like Agatha Christie, she wrote some novels. So Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple, ये दो कैरेक्टर हैं जो अगस्ता क्रिस्टी ने उनके novels में बनाए हैं. So then we have got some more famous women novelists here. Harper Lee, Margaret Atwood, very famous Canadian writer, Toni Morrison and Alice Walker. They elevated the tradition further to prosperity. एक्चुअली यहाँ पे आपको क्या बताया गया है, जो हिस्ट्री है नॉवेल की, कुछ पहले राइटर्स थे, उसके बाद विमेन नॉवलिस्ट आए, सब ने मिलके कुछ ना कुछ तरीके से जो इंग्लिश नॉवेल का जो ट्रेडिशन है उसको आगे बढ़ाया है. सो वी हैव सीन दैट हियर इन 18th century, लाइक डेनियल डेफो, जॉन बेनियन और दिस जोनाथन स्विफ्ट, ये कुछ फेमस राइटर्स थे. उसके बाद कुछ वुमेन नॉवलिस्ट आए, वेरी फेमस वन. आई विल हैव अ क्विक रिकैप वंस आई फिनिश दिस ऑफ. So this was in Europe. Now next, if you see in Indian scenario, we have to just go through it quickly. So Raja Mohan's wife, first novel ever written in Indian literature. It was written by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Remember, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. He wrote this Raj Mohan's wife. Remember, इवन ये भी आपके एग्जाम में कई बार आ चुका है. तो यू शुड नो दैट राज मोहन्स वाइफ, इट इज अ टेक्स्ट नॉवेल जो लिखा गया था बंकिम चंद्रा चट्टोपाध्याय, उन्होंने लिखा था. यस. देन व्हाट हैपेंड आफ्टर दिस पीरियड, वी हैड सम मोर इंडियन राइटर्स. सो दीज नॉवेल्स दे हैड नेशनलिस्टिक वर्च्यूज, देशभक्ति के नॉवेल्स जो मोस्टली दे वर बेस्ड ऑन पेट्रियोटिज्म, देशभक्ति जो थे उसके बारे में लिखे गए थे. So if you look at here some famous writers here, Mulk Raj Anand, in Indian literature, R.K. Narayan and Raja Rao. Like R.K. Narayan, you've got an astrologer's day. So Mulk Raj Anand, R.K. Narayan, Raja Rao are very major writers. They are called major trio. So Mulk Raj Anand, R.K. Narayan, Raja Rao, Indian writers. After that, we had some more novelists here, some like Anita Desai, very important feminist writer. नयनतारा सहगल भी एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट राइटर है. अरुण जोशी, मनोहर मालगांवकर, they changed the current of Indian English novel through their work. So they kind of brought revolutions in Indian literature. After that, we've got some more important writers. अमिताभ घोष, विक्रम सेठ है यहाँ पे, उपाध्यायन चटर्जी. They again ameliorated Indian novels in English by adding new features to it. They adorned it, adding more and more features. So you might have seen whenever we've got some writers, when they keep coming in the picture, they कुछ नया लेके आते हैं. So हर एक novelist जो था कुछ नए features लेके आ रहा था novel में, नए themes लेके आ रहा था. यहाँ पे भी हमने देखा है कि कुछ जो women novelists थे Indian literature में थे और ब्रिटिश लिटरेचर में थे, उन्होंने भी कुछ उनकी तरफ से कुछ तो कंट्रीब्यूट किया है. सो एवरीबडी वाज कंट्रीब्यूटिंग फॉर द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ नॉवेल, एंड it's very clearly seen here in this section. So we see here recent years now witnessed dazzling performance by Indian novelists like Salman Rushdie, Arvind Adiga, Arundhati Roy, Kiran Desai and Kiran Nagarkar. Very famous writers are there. So this was history of novels, famous writers, किसने क्या लिखा और क्या थीम उन्होंने किस किस थीम के बारे में लिखा, ये सब का रिकॉर्ड ये आपको इस सेक्शन में मिलेगा. इसके बाद व्हेन वी मूव अहेड, हमको यहाँ पे क्या देखने मिलता है दैट English novel has undergone a vital change since its birth. So we've seen that no earlier English novels were written in poetic form. पहले पोइट्री की तरह लिखे जाते थे, प्रोज फॉर्म में आ गए. उसके बाद शॉर्ट नॉवेल थे, फिर बहुत बल्कि नॉवेल्स भी देखे हमने. यस, 1000 पेजेस के भी हैं. सो डेवलपमेंट तो हमेशा होते रहता है. सो व्हाट इज अ नॉवेला एक्चुअली? ये नॉवेला, दिस इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट वन. आई विल request you, please, you focus here, try to bring your attention to this section, very very important one. Last question paper, that was repeaters question paper, a complete match the following section was taken from here, so you cannot skip this very very important one. Novella, what is novella? Originated again from Italian word novelle. It's a type of prose shorter than full length novel. जो novels बहुत बड़े होते हैं जैसे हमने देखा, but जो novel होता है ये थोड़ा short book होता है for 25 to 30 pages, shorter than the novel, remember. And here it is a well structured yet short, very short narrative. You have minimum characters here, and theme is also a very single theme here. You can have one or two more themes, not multiple themes like novels. So which are famous novellas? Short narratives. जो छोटे छोटे जो बुक लिखे गए थे 35 to 40 pages, they are called novellas. So which are famous one? और ये सब आप देख सकते हैं, ये एग्जाम में सब आया है. Like The Heart of Darkness, this novel is, it was written by Joseph Conrad. Please remember this, Heart of Darkness, Joseph Conrad. मैच द फॉलोइंग में आता है. एक साइड में आपको पूरे नॉवेल्स दिए होते हैं, एक पर नॉवेलिस्ट दिए होते हैं, आपको सिर्फ मैच करना है किसने क्या लिखा है. सो जोसेफ कॉनरेड ने लिखा है हार्ट ऑफ डार्कनेस. इसके बाद वेरी फेमस बुक टर्न ऑफ द स्क्रीव बाय हेनरी जेम्स. रिमेंबर दिस. बिलीवर, दिस वाज बाय हरमन मेलविल. यस, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट बुक. डेथ इन वेनिस बाय थॉमस मन. सीज द डे बाय सॉल बेलो. पर्ल बाय जॉन स्टेनबैक. सो ये जो 6 novellas हैं, प्लीज लर्न देम बाय हार्ट, बिकॉज एग्जामिनर दे ट्राई टू पिक अप these and turn them into questions. So आपको मालूम होना चाहिए किसने क्या लिखा है. Like Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, Henry James, Turn of the Screw, Herman Melville, Billy Bird, Death in Venice by Thomas Mann, and Saul Bellow ने क्या लिखा है, Seize the Day, Last One Pearl by John Steinbeck. ये बहुत important है. Now next one, elements of novels. Now there are 7 elements like theme, plot, or character, setting, conflict, language, styles, and all that. So I will go a little fast here also. In fill in the blanks, some of the questions were asked in previous year question paper. So here it has got 6 elements. Remember, what is theme? Central idea in the novel which can be expressed in a nutshell, in short. Yes. So what is a plot? Plot is the story, remember, or the course of event in the novel or any genre of literature, that is novel, short stories, or novella. So what is plot? Story, remember. So they say that it is created by the conflict, either internal and external. Conflicts are of 2 types, internal and external. What is internal conflict? Whenever writer tries to read the minds of character, इनके दिमाग में क्या चल रहा है, some psychological issues are there, so that is internal conflict. What is external? What is happening around them? Society में क्या problems हैं, because of that they suffer. So external conflict. Internal, what is happening in their mind. Psychoanalysis is called internal conflict. So plot जो होता है ये 2 तरह के होते हैं, simple and complex plot. Simple plot सिर्फ 1 plot होता है. Complex plot ये होता है, there are so many subplots. Like for example, if you take example of any movie like बाहुबली movies में हमारे पास थे 2 plots थे. बाहुबली का उसको मार दिया और उसके बाद सेकंड सिक्वल आया. सो यहाँ पे 2 स्टोरीज थे in 1 movie. So that was complex plot. और सिंपल प्लॉट में क्या होता है, एक ही स्टोरी होती है फ्रॉम द बिगिनिंग टिल एंड, एंड यू आर नॉट सो मच कंफ्यूज्ड while watching or reading any novel. So remember this, plot is of 2 kinds, simple and complex. Simple, 1 plot, 1 story in the novel, and complex there are more than 2 stories. Remember, conflicts are internal and external. Next we have like characters who are characters, players, those who play the role in the story, drama, etc. So what is characterizations? Related to the plot as the course of event take place because of the behavior of the character. See, character or characterizations, both are different one. What is characterization? Whenever writer allocates different roles to different characters, they are called, it's called, this process is called characterizations. So इससे अलग अलग तरह characters निकल के आते हैं, some major, minor character. So here remember the major character, even this was asked, ये भी पूछा गया था last exam में, major character or the main character, he is called protagonist. Protagonist, protagonist, remember इसको बोलते हैं main character. And if you see here, like for example, To Serve with Love, your novel, this one, in that, who is main character? E.R. Braithwaite. So who is he? Protagonist. If you see here, sorry, he is not, yeah, he's a teacher, you can call him a protagonist. And who is a minor character? Villain. Like he is called antagonist here. Antagonist, yes, protagonist, antagonist, these two. मेजर एंड माइनर, विलन को बोलते हैं एंटेगनिस्ट, और जो मेजर कैरेक्टर होता है जो लीडिंग रोल प्ले करता है उसको बोलते हैं प्रोटैगनिस्ट. अभी सेटिंग जो होता है, व्हाट इज सेटिंग? द बैकग्राउंड इन विच स्टोरी टेक्स प्लेस. बैकग्राउंड, सो बैकग्राउंड में क्या क्या आता है? इन दैट प्लेस, पीरियड, टाइम, क्लाइमेट, वेदर, लाइफस्टाइल, all of that, it comes in that. So for example, if you see, I will just give you one example. Take example of your novel only, To Serve with Love, written by E.R. Braithwaite. इसमें क्या बैकग्राउंड है? इसमें है कलोनियल बैकग्राउंड, ब्लैक वाइट डिस्क्रिमिनेशन का बैकग्राउंड है इसमें. देख, ब्लैक लोग और वाइट लोग तो आपस में हमेशा झगड़ा करते थे, स्लेव ट्रेडिंग होता था आपस में, उनको स्लेव्स वर सोल्ड बाय वाइट पीपल. सो दिस इज द कॉन्फ्लिक्ट. इसमें उनका प्लेस जो है, प्लेस, पीरियड, टाइम, क्लाइमेट, वेदर, लाइफस्टाइल, ये सब उसके राइटर बैकग्राउंड में दिखाता है. दिस इज कॉल्ड सेटिंग. रिमेंबर, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट वन. इट इज द स्ट्रगल बिटवीन ऑपोजिट फोर्सेस, one good, one bad, conflict. Yes, so this conflict provide interest and curiosity. Without conflict you will have no story. Remember, कुछ तो प्रॉब्लम होना चाहिए ना, तभी तो स्टोरी आगे बढ़ती है. So that's why we say conflict. It is between opposite forces. Yes. So language and style. What is language? And a technique used by author for narration. जब वो नरेट करते हैं कोई चीज, जब उसको बताते हैं, रिलेट करते हैं, so what kind of language they use? That's called language or style. Like author can use extensive vocabulary, high phrases, or may be laconic. Laconic means using minimum words, or he may use linguistic devices to make narrative effective. He can do that. So all these factors decide the texture of the narration, create an impact on the reader. So language and style means the usage of words, phrases, idioms by a particular writer. It becomes his own style. Remember, narrative style. So इसको बोलते हैं style. Remember. Now, next part, the last section in this unit, types of novels. यहाँ पे कुछ types of novels दिया है. As I told you, I'm not giving you extra examples. I'm trying to explain in Hindi too, which is quite difficult for me to do. I'm doing that, but try to understand that here, each and every point, the major developments are important from the point of your exam. You cannot skip any important points. So, and very soon in the description, I will paste a link with notes, with all important notes, like Indian in notes on this section. So I will put there, वहां पे नीचे लिंक में डाल दूंगा, so that you can just browse through quickly. So types of novel. रियलिस्टिक नॉवेल कौन से होते हैं? जिसमें लोगों की जो रियल प्रॉब्लम्स है उनको बताया जाता है. सो रियलिस्टिक नॉवेल्स, द फिक्शन गिव्स इफेक्ट ऑफ रियलिज्म. समटाइम्स इट्स कॉल्ड नॉवेल ऑफ मैनर. उनके जो आपस के मैनर्स हैं, एटीट्यूड्स, देयर बिहेवियर, सराउंडिंग, सोशल क्लास, क्लास कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, स्टेटस, वो सबको ये नॉवेल्स में दिखाया जाता है. दे आर कॉल्ड रियलिस्टिक नॉवेल. सो टू सर्व विद लव, सॉरी, दैट नॉवेल कैन बी कॉल्ड रियलिस्टिक नॉवेल, क्योंकि उसमें रियलिज्म दिखाया ना, ब्लैक व्हाइट कैसे आपस में फाइट करते हैं. सो रियलिस्टिक नॉवेल. देन यू हैव पिकारेस्क नॉवेल. वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट हियर. So in exam, if this term comes, they may ask you about the genesis of this type of novel. So remember picaresque, picaro, स्पेनिश वर्ड पिकारो, ऐसा याद रखो, यस आपको वर्ड में मिल जाएगा. इसका मतलब है रोग, मीन्स अ वेरी एक्सेंट्रिक कैरेक्टर, थोड़ा ना थोड़ा सा जो ड्रंकर्ड होता है और थोड़ा सा एक्सेंट्रिक कैरेक्टर हु डजंट हैव एनी रिस्पेक्ट इन द सोसाइटी, यहाँ जब जॉम्बी जॉम्बी टाइप ऑफ कैरेक्टर. सो पिकारो, रोग. नेक्स्ट हिस्टोरिकल नॉवेल, इसमें हिस्ट्री के बारे में बताया जाता है. लाइक एनी हिस्टोरिकल टॉपिक इज पिक्ड अप एंड composed composed as a book. Like if you see William Shakespeare wrote so many drama, 37 dramas. In that some are historical dramas like Henry 1 2 about king queen, unka history bataya. So historical novel. Epistolary, very important, it was asked in exam, so please do not miss it. Epistolary, look at the word here, epistola, Latin word epistola, उससे लिया गया है, इसका मतलब होता है लेटर. Epistolary novel is taken from the word epistola, जिसका मतलब होता है लेटर. So what happens here, जो यहाँ का जो narrative होता है, narrative, उसमें कैसे correspondence होता है, लेटर से होता है. If you see Jane Austen, she has written so many novels, even in Emma, Pride and Prejudice, you can see that characters, they exchange letters, वो एक दूसरे को letters भेज के correspondence करते हैं. So ऐसे novels में letters के through conversation होता है, more than dialogues. So यहाँ पे epistola, remember letter, Latin word. Next one, we have Gothic novels, novels which include terror, mystery, horror. भूत की जो मूवी, भूत की जो टेक्स्ट होते हैं, हॉरर, थ्रिलर, सुपरनैचुरल, डेथ, डिके, ऑल, जो भयानक जो नॉवेल्स लिखे जाते हैं, जो मूवीज होती हैं ना, वो गॉथिक नॉवेल्स बोलते हैं. ऑटोबायोग्राफिकल नॉवेल, a writer who writes about himself. So the best example to serve with love novel, ये ऑटोबायोग्राफिकल है. क्यों ऑटोबायोग्राफिकल है? क्योंकि जो A.R. Braithwaite, he is black writer and he himself writes about his own life. उसने जो भी प्रॉब्लम्स देखा था, प्रॉब्लम्स हुए थे, उसके बारे में लिखा है. सो दैट्स व्हाई इट इज कॉल्ड ऑटोबायोग्राफिकल नॉवेल. Allegorical novel, here in allegorical novel what happens, no, everything has got second meaning. Like there are some characters, they have got second signification of meaning. Allegory is a story that bears more than one level of meaning, as I told you. The famous like beast fables are there. There was one, like if you take example of Animal Farm, you can call it an allegorical novel. You have so many animals there, वहाँ बहुत सारे animals हैं, and these animals they represent some historical figures etc. So इसलिए इसको बोलते हैं allegorical novel, क्योंकि वहाँ पे there is a pig, but pig is actually not a pig, it stands for Napoleon, that warrior. So it's about that, it's called allegorical novel. Next one, we've got psychological novel, utopian. These two words are opposite words, utopian, dystopian. Utopian means heavenly, dystopian, hell. So utopia, imaginary community which has got ideal qualities, it's everything is okay. Utopia, kind of heaven. But what is dystopia? Opposite of that, where you have a lot of problems and all that, fight, war. Dystopian novels. Psychological novel क्या होता है, यहाँ पे कैरेक्टर, ये जो राइटर है, he tries to read the minds of his characters, protagonist, antagonist, some internal conflicts which are happening in their mind. So that's called psychological novel. Stream of consciousness technique, इसको बोलते हैं actually in short terms flashback technique. Flashback, जब मूवी में देखते हैं हम, सडनली कोई मूवी चल रही है, सडनली दे गो इनटू पास्ट, सो देयर consciousness flows like a stream. So here this was for the first time coined. जो कॉइन किसने किया, कॉइन मीन जो इन्वेंट किया था, किसने किया था? इट वाज विलियम जेम्स, बाय विलियम जेम्स. रिमेंबर, इट वाज कॉइन्ड बाय विलियम जेम्स. He wrote one treaty, one book, Principles of Psychology in 1890. Remember, in 1890 में एक बुक लिखा गया था विलियम जेम्स ने. उस बुक में उन्होंने for the first time he used this word stream of consciousness. Remember, and it's really very interesting literary terms. You will find this in most of the novels. वहाँ पे क्या होता है, जब कोई स्टोरी चलती रहती है, सडनली दे गो बैक इनटू द पास्ट, फ्लैशबैक में चले जाते हैं, वो स्ट्रीम ऑफ कॉन्शियसनेस बोलते हैं. सो we've got here one more part, Bildung's Roman novel. It's look at the word, it means growth. So what happens here, a character, he is very innocent, he is poor, but through the course of the narrative, जैसे स्टोरी आगे बढ़ती है, वो धीरे धीरे उसकी पर्सनैलिटी में, उसके माइंडसेट में एक ग्रोथ दिखता है, एक डेवलपमेंट दिखता है, नो वेरी timely growth. So these are called Bildungsroman novels, like Portrait of Artist as a Young Man. एक आपने सुना होगा, बहुत फेमस बुक है, उसमें ऐसा दिखाया है, there is a character, he grows gradually through the experiences of life. So Bildungsroman novels. So in 20th century एक pulp magazine आया था, it became very popular in 20th century, uh, in which fantastic fictions for the general entertainment of masses was printed on cheap pulp paper. ये pulp जो पेपर होते हैं, pulp, उस पे ये प्रिंट हुआ था, that's why pulp magazines 20th century. So then science fiction, very important. What is science fiction? You have technology, you have space here, you have futuristic science, space travels and time travels. आजकल तो सब मूवी इस तरह की मूवीज आती हैं. So science fiction, yes. So you can just take example of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley 1823. ये फर्स्ट नॉवेल, फर्स्ट साइंस फिक्शन नॉवेल है बेस्ड ऑन टेक्नोलॉजी. प्लीज रिमेंबर, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. लास्ट में मैंने इसके पहले भी आपको बताया था व्हेन आई वाज डीलिंग विद विमेन नॉवेलिस्ट कि ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, ये आपके एग्जाम में आ सकता है. सॉरी, यस. सो फ्रैंकेनस्टाइन बाय मैरी शेली, रिमेंबर दिस. First science fiction novel, you can say, in 19th century. Then detective fiction. What is detective fiction here? Sub genre of crime fiction, just crime fiction or detective fiction. For example, if you take if you remember, you have one novel, Around the World in 80 Days. वो नॉवल में क्या है, देयर इज अ कैरेक्टर देयर, फिक्स, डिटेक्टिव फिक्स, क्राइम रॉबरी होता है, एंड ही, उसको ऐसा लगता है कि जो मिस्टर फॉग जो प्रोटैगनिस्ट है उसमें नॉवेल में, ही इज द क्रिमिनल, वो ही इज एट फॉल्ट, बट ही वाज एक्चुअली ही वाज नॉट राइट बिकॉज ही वाज नॉट एट फॉल्ट. सो व्हेन इस तरह का जो इवेंट्स मिलते हैं हमको नॉवेल्स में, तो डिटेक्टिव फिक्शन के उसमें आते हैं, एंगल में आते हैं, ये सब इस तरह के. सो डिटेक्टिव फिक्शन जो है वो आइदर प्रोफेशनल, एमेच्योर मींस इमेच्योर लोग ऐसे इन्वेस्टिगेट करते हैं. सो थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर दिस. दिस इज यूनिट 1 हिस्ट्री ऑफ नॉवेल्स. जो मेजर जो इवेंट्स थे मैंने आपको सब बताया हूँ, एंड दे मे कम इन योर एग्जाम. So there are some questions now, some brainstorming activities here. We'll try to do that. We will try to see if we have really learned some of them so that we can find some of the answers. Or for the first time, actually, I've tried to uh, make this video in Hindi. So please bear. Next one, brainstorming now. See, this is here, as I told you, we need to just match the following. So you can pause the video and do this activity, but just I will try to do it here now. If you see first one, Murasaki Shikibu, first novel which was written, that was Tale of Genji. It was written by him, no, Murasaki Shikibu. Do you remember? Yes. Novella, Italian word से लिया गया. उसका meaning क्या है? It means new. Don Quixote. Yeah, it was written by Cervantes. Miguel de Cervantes wrote Don Quixote, this book, in Europe, remember. And last one, Raja Mohan's wife, first Indian novel in literature, that was Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. Yes, it was written by him. Raj Mohan's wife by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. So you can do, if you watch this video closely, make notes, so you'll be able to do this. Remember. Next one, pick out the odd element from the group. Odd element ढूंढेंगे अभी. अरुण जोशी, विक्रम सेठ, ग्रैहम ग्रीन, किरण नागरकर. कौन सा ऑड लग रहा है ऐसे? किरण नागरकर, विक्रम सेठ और अरुण जोशी, ये तीनों कौन है? ये तीनों इंडियन राइटर्स हैं. और जो ग्रैहम ग्रीन ब्रिटिश राइटर्स हो, ऑब्वियसली ऑड मैन आउट, इसको बाहर निकाल दो. यस, दिस इज द आंसर. प्लेस, I will circle it. This is the answer is place, period, time, climate, lifestyle. So place, period, climate, lifestyle. As I told you, this is about the background of the novel. यहाँ पे अलग क्या लग रहा है हमें? Theme. Because theme, it does not come under background. So this is the answer here. Next one, theme, plot, character, novella. Theme, plot, character, they are elements of novel. And this novella, this is different one. So These are the answer. These are the odd element in the group. Next, you've got, they say there are two types of conflict that the plot may have. Ah, I will try to write here two types of conflicts that plot have: internal and external. Sorry, external. Next one, we've got next, what Picaro is originated from. What Picaresque, Picaro, Picaro, Picaro. It means rogue, rogue, eccentric character. Yes, Picaro. And next one, Spanish no Picaro. Epistola, novel present narrative through letters. Letter, letters. Why letters? Epistola means letters. Last one, in 18th century, middle class could get time for reading and discussing the novels. Because why? Because they started reading newspapers and a magazine. So if you look at here, it is a little longer answer. 18th century middle class could get time for reading and discussing the novels, because you can say it was an age of intellect. They had newspapers, they were taking more interest, and they were supposed to enjoy elite standards with their gradual growth. So you can write about that. Next one, write short notes on style of novel. Style of novel means here you talk about the language and style. Stream of consciousness novel, like by विलियम जेम्स ने फर्स्ट टाइम कॉइन किया था उसको बुक में, जो मैं आपको बताया. Novella taken from Italian word which means new. Indian traditions of novel, so write something about Indian writers. So if you know all of that, you can very quickly pass in exam and try to get all 4 marks in this section, because यहाँ पे marks cut करने का कोई